So the Deuteronomistic historian presents the tragic history of the two kingdoms as essentially a sequence of idolatrous aberrations, which were followed by punishment, and this cycle continued until finally there had to be complete destruction. While it's certainly true that moral sins and other religious sins in Israel were punishable in the Deuteronomist view, it's really only the worship of other gods that brings about national collapse, national exile. And that view is exemplified in 2 Kings chapter 17, which I read to you. It doesn't mention moral sins as leading to the collapse of the state. It harps on idolatry. Idolatry was what provoked God to drive the nation into exile. The view of the classical prophets is a little different. Israel's history is determined by moral factors, not just religious factors. So the nation is punished not only for idolatry, but for moral failings. And of course, the two are to a large degree intertwined, but the emphasis on the moral is striking in the prophets. And it may not be so startling to hear that God would doom a generation or doom a nation for grave moral sins like murder and violence. This is something we've already seen, right? In the generation of the flood, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, they were destroyed for grievous violations of morality, murder, violence, and so on. The prophets, however, are claiming that the nation is doomed because of commonplace wrongs, because of bribe taking, because of false scales and false weights that are being used in the marketplace. These are the crimes for which destruction of the nation and exile will take place. Amos 2, verses 6 through 8. Thus said the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Israel, for 4 I will not revoke the decree of destruction. Because they have sold for silver those whose cause is just, right, taking bribes in a courtroom setting, and the needy for a pair of sandals. Ah, you who trample the heads of the poor into the dust of the ground and make the humble walk a twisted course. So this is the first difference, really, between the Deuteronomistic interpretation of the nation's history, the destruction of Israel, and the prophetic interpretation. For the prophets, the national catastrophes are just punishment for sin, but not just the sin of idolatry, for all sins, no matter how petty, no matter how venial, because all sins violate the terms of the covenant code, which is given specially to Israel. Right? And the terms of the covenant, being vassals to the sovereign Yahweh, means treating co-vassals in a particular way, and it is breach of covenant not to do that. And again, how much the prophets were harking back to an older tradition, to ancient traditions about Israel and its covenant relationship, traditions according to which Israel's redemption and election entailed moral obligations. How much they were the ones to actually generate and argue for this idea, again, is hotly debated by scholars. It's not an issue that we need to decide. But I would note that the primacy of morality in Israelite religion certainly dates back at least to the times of the earliest prophets, Amos in the 8th century, for example, and may indeed have had antecedents. It certainly didn't just arise in the exile, as some scholars would have us believe. It certainly was not the invention of the Deuteronomistic historian. It's alive and well in some of these very early prophets.